Defining Duke, an Xbox podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support the show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Salutations, everybody. It is Matty here, and welcome to episode 30 of Defining Duke Ultimate, a Defining Duke supplement. If you're listening to this, you're a patron. Thank you. As always, I'm joined by the man, the myth, the legend, the Ascent beater, Lord Cognito.
Yo, Matty, what's going on? Ultimate time. I like our little ultimate talks. Like, I don't think
always.
It's always in depth, more of a, you know what I'm saying?
Focus.
Yeah, real focus. Exactly.
Yeah.
Good word. So yeah, man, I'm loving it. We got to dive into this one for sure.
Yeah, we have been talking about this for weeks. This is our first ever Defining Duke Ultimate Spoilercast / review discussion. Before we begin, I'd like to address one comment. This comes from Not Skywalker. This isn't a writing question per se, but I do want to reach out to encourage more of these styled episodes. I think DDU is a perfect outlet for Last Stand Media to address spoilercasts or games that are associated with Game Pass, or specifically the Xbox ecosystem. Cheers, and looking forward to this episode, as well as a hopeful future of DDU spoilercast for Halo Infinite, Forza, Redfall, and beyond. I just wanted to address right away, for those who are tapping in, trying to get a feel of what this is, we are going to do these for exactly that. Major Game Pass Day 1 drops. And of course, we're going to do it for big exclusives. That's our goal. The reason we weren't able to do this is there weren't really any exclusives. Right? Yeah, let's be honest, right? So here we are now. And also, like, the show was in its infancy when something like Outriders came around. We couldn't do a review discussion spoiler cast for that because we were still figuring out how to do DDU. But now that we have ourselves established, that's something you can expect in the future. As per the Sacred Symbols review discussion and spoiler cast, I just want to make it clear for everyone. The first half will always be spoiler free. As we get into the story, we'll let you know. We'll warn you for spoilers. You can tap out from wherever you're listening, and you can tune back in when you play and beat the game, or you can continue listening, whatever works for you. But like I said, today we're talking about the Ascent, and this is a game that I was very much looking forward to. It came out right at the tail end of July, so we want to make sure also we give the patrons time to play, beat the game, and submit their feedback through a thread, which, Cog, a little disappointed. 7 write-ins. That's a floor right there, man. That's a new low.
The crowd is spoken. It's all good, but yeah, it's a testament to, I guess, things we're gonna have to talk about.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So, of course, in the future, I imagine we will get more. But this was definitely when we I thought my app was glitching. Right, I'm like loading it up, thinking like. I told Dustin on Saturday, like, you mind putting up a thread? He's like, yeah, sure, no problem. Mm-hmm. In all fairness, there was a lot of threads going live that day. We may have just got lost in the shuffle, but
yeah, that's true too.
I remember checking and seeing like 6 comments. I clicked and I'm like, oh, it's just not loading to my internet, right? And I disconnect from my Wi-Fi, go LTE. I'm just like, oh yeah, this is actually only 6 comments. No, we got excellent comments though. Pretty much everyone who wrote in, congrats, you are here in this show. So let's get it started with general thoughts on the game. And I've made it clear where I stand on it, so it's less of a surprise from my end. I want to know for you, Cog, like it, dislike it, fall in the middle. Where are you with it?
All right. So first, full disclosure, right? Me and you had the conversations offline. So I'm like, Matty, I don't know. Like, I don't know, man. You know what I'm saying? And to your credit, you was like, you know what, let's do it. And I said, you know what? Let me give it a shot. When I first booted it up, I think I was with Rand, and it was like a night. I was tired. I wasn't in the best mood when I first attempted it. So I was like, all right. And I'm be honest, like, I'm not the biggest twin stick guy coming in. So that was already some things going on. But then, give it a day, went back to it because I spoke to my boy Matty. You know what I'm saying? I said, nah, I'm going to go back to it. We're going to give it the real assessment, right? Okay. And I ain't going to lie. It slowly started to win me over with certain things, right? Now, granted, this game has issues, and we will get into that. Right. But the initial impressions was, you know what? I do like it. There's a nice foundation. The thing, that got me, the cyberpunk aesthetic, and from an isometric world, this is one of the most beautiful games going.
Absolutely.
Like I don't play a lot of isometric, so I don't have a lot to compare to. You can help me there,
Right.
but like it gave the illusion when you're walking over and you're seeing, the pharmaceutical and the big things in the back and the big city structures, and it gives you the illusion of this lived-in world, and even the little NPCs and stuff that's running around, and it's dense. It's like very densely packed. And I was like, you know what? I like the vibes. Narratively, I'm not there. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to play it different from you, because I know you was in your Matty bag, single player.
Yep.
I wanted to play co-op. And I have to admit, the way it won me over, it is a fun co-op game.
Okay.
It is really fun to play with friends. Shout out to my boy. Shout out to my boy Valakon, Kai Batsu, ILP Clan. And I was like, look, man, homework assignment. I need y'all. I need to play this game all the way through. I only played about maybe one mission solo, right? But the rest co-op. I ain't gonna front. Like there's a lot going there, but I know we'll get deeper. I got more things I want to get deeper, but I want your initial, because I know this is a polarizing one.
Right.
And I know how excited you were coming in.
I was extremely excited. I think it's great to hear that you found a way to enjoy it over time. For me, it was a roller coaster. So I, for those who never saw it, posted on my channel 5-hour impressions, and I was initially told I was extremely hard on the game.
Yes.
And that I maybe got this one wrong. And I don't back down from, I'm not like saying it's like dig my heels, but I don't really, I make sure when I put something out, it's like I can at least say I stand by this, even if people don't agree with me. But this was one where the outcry was strong enough where I was looking at it going, okay, let's take a deep dive here now. Let's really like push through, finish this. I wanted to, of course, do it for DDU, but that was before I think we were even really planning it.
Yeah.
And it was just this up and down. You'd see the flashes of potential, like you said, the world space, the graphics. I'm not a graphics guy, but yeah, when you talk about isometric games, it's definitely probably the most beautiful one I can think of. It just brings everything to life. The amount of NPCs on screen, I think the way they sort of created this dense city, that was something that added to the game, especially when a lot of them were interactable. Yes. The exploration was pretty solid. It was a pretty open game going from place to place, even if the navigation itself was bad. I loved how open it was. There was a lot there I liked about the world space, but for me, a lot of my woes came from the gameplay. I found it very frustrating on a gameplay front for a number of reasons. I think the main one was I don't like to put games in a box. Like I like when they try to do a lot of things. I think when you have a smaller team like this one, which was made by 12 people, this was something where I think you got to pick a couple of things and go forward with them. You can only do so much, because I felt like this game was thinking one day we're going to be Diablo, another day we're going to be the next Alien Nation, like a twin stick shooter, and it just couldn't seem to pick what side of the fence it wanted to be on. And so what happened is I think it was just straddling the line too much. Okay. And I found it frustrating when you combine that with bugs, glitches. And I will say, now people listening, there is a patch that's available. Yes. That has come out. There's been 2 patches. Yes. And they've continued to fine tune the game. Apparently it's in a much better state now. So keep that in mind. But what we played it as, mine wasn't even pre-launch. Mine was at launch with everyone else. I played it when it came out. I know you played the launch version, so it wasn't like we were granted early access review copies. Right. So we are going based off our experience, which some people may differ by the time they're listening to this. Now, on the note of 12 people making this, Dan XL wrote in. Yes. We'll get the patron feedback now. Hey, Dukes, I've thoroughly enjoyed the Ascent despite its flaws, but I don't think I've ever played a game so buggy. I understand this game was made by only 12 people. There comes a point where we can't lean on an excuse. A game like Death's Door was made by an even smaller team and was extremely polished. Yes, it was by 2 people, for those who don't know. We have to stop giving these small teams a pass for launching a broken game. All in all, I thought the Ascent was good, but didn't reach its full potential because of the broken state of launch. Love the pod. Keep it up. So what was your experience with bugs and glitches for this game?
Oh, yeah, they was there. They was there. Because
I imagine they were exaggerated with co-op.
You know what's funny? The issues we had All right. So I only had one like seriously hard crash where you log in and like the floor is transparent. You could see through. It was bad. So I had to back all the way out.
Okay.
The main thing we had was like sometimes you complete a quest or you initiate a mission start off, and let's say an action sequence is supposed to happen, and it would never click off. And I'm like, yo, what's going on? I could and like the surrounding area was locked down as if it was like this was supposed to be a battle, but now I can't escape. So I'm like, all right, we got to go to dashboard. Something's up, right? The other thing we noticed is like we go to different vendors and stuff. So I mess with my augments, my tacticals, and all that stuff. And then my boy is like, yo, I'm walking backwards. I can't interact with anything. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah. So we had to do a trick to initiate like call the taxi or go to the subway just to get the character to act normal again back in the real world. We would have that a lot. You know what I mean? So yeah, it had its issues. You know what I'm saying? There's no doubt about that. And then like on one end, I love the camera, right? Because sometimes it gives you this really, like before you going into the deep stink area and you see that thing in the back, and it sometimes the camera really works well. And then there's other times where, let's say, the camera works well when you're moving up or you're going left to right. But I hated it when I was going down because I felt like I couldn't see the enemy. It wouldn't scale back far enough so that I could see the enemy. So I think that's where not having any camera control hurt it. Because there was sometimes the isometric nature of the game is like literally obstructing my sight. And I'm like, damn, I want to, you know what I'm saying, where you at with the shooting kind of thing. But those are my major beefs as far as glitches. I got a whole bunch of other complaints, but glitches, that's definitely what about you with glitches?
Yeah, with glitches, I had a couple of crashes. For me, the biggest bugs I ran into were quest bugs, where this is what I said in my preview, this is what amplified my frustration with the navigation. I don't mind if a game asks of you a little more to and fro. I'm a little more patient with that stuff. But when I get across the map, even after doing taxis and train stations and stuff, and I get there and the quest is not loaded or it doesn't work, I had that happen on a multitude of occasions where I was like, geez, man, I can't finish quests now. And so maybe I wouldn't have been as underleveled for certain gameplay instances where I was getting smushed. And it really all mounted quickly. But for me, that was the main one. It was the quest bugs. Because beyond that, I'm trying to think, like, dialogue was fine. There were occasional pop in and stuff. I don't. For me, I've never cared for pop in unless it's like very egregious. Like it's just sitting there, like the texture's not loading, and you're like, I'm looking at you now. Like you can, I've seen that before. It's like, all right, that's a little annoying. But when I'm like watching a cutscene, you just see like one person flash in. It's like, all right, whatever. It's a game.
I'm the same with you.
But beyond that, I think what happened was this game was so buggy where everyone was experiencing something different, because what you had, I never saw or even heard of. And for me, I'm sure, with quests and stuff, a lot of people experience that. Maybe yours was more co-op oriented. It's tough to nail down, but it's clear that this game needed more time. So let's talk with Tom909, who writes in, hey, fellas, what's up? Hope you're well. I very much enjoyed the Ascent, finding it one of the most out and out fun games from a gameplay perspective I've played in a while. It certainly had flaws and could have done with more time in the oven, but as a big twin stick guy, I was able to look past this and jump in an hour a day to soak up the wonderfully realized world and have some good old manic shooter fun. One thing I did notice online was people talking about the difference in experiences between the Game Pass and Steam versions. When the Game Pass update dropped the other day, which Steam got after launch, I booted the game on Series X and noticed ray tracing was finally on. This made the already gorgeous game pop even more. It really is a technical and visual showcase. This should have been present weeks ago, though. Also, I've heard that this game feels a lot better than using mouse and keyboard. This leads me to my question. Do you think the game was originally developed as a PC title and then got Game Pass funding, so they had to rush in gamepad functionality and were behind with the Game Pass version? Did they simply care more about the Steam customers who bought the game outright? Or is it the Microsoft certification process that's just very slow for patches, etc.? Maybe something else would explain the disparity. Keep up the great work and have a somewhat okay day.
Yeah. This is a good point. I remember, shout out to my boy Alex. He, I know a lot of content creators on PC, Game Pass PC specifically, and they have issue. You know, they have said this has been a consistent problem. I told you about my one bad experience with Streets of Rage, you know, on Game Pass on PC. But this has been a problem. A lot of UWP issues on their version. And it sucks because, you know, the Steam version, from my understanding, you know, the DLSS, the all those features, the ray tracing, all that stuff were there. And then on that, they said it was there. But I heard it wasn't. Now, to this recent patch, the Ascent game Twitter account finally addressed it. Like, I would say maybe about a week ago, I'm gonna say. I remember seeing the tweet, and I tweeted a couple of my PC guys like, yo, look like this is the issue y'all were talking about. Let me know what happens. Let me know what you guys are thinking. And the early reports were they were improved. But I mean, to his question, I mean, I think the disparity is, I don't want to blame Ascent on this one, surprisingly. I want to say there's an underlying issue, the disparity between Game Pass console and Game Pass PC. And shout out to Jez Gordon, who had a tremendous article on this, saying that Microsoft really needs to do a better job. If they want to be taken seriously in the PC space, they have to do a better job. So, yeah, this is a known issue. And to his other part, I just want to comment one thing. Sure. As far as old school Manic shooter, there's one thing I do want to say. I ain't going for it, man. When you are playing and you get your shooter, it's funny that like some real hard rock beat drops when the violence goes on. It kind of gets me into it. If you play this with a good surround system or whatever, like, and the beat drop, you kind of get pumped. But that's what I just wanted to say about that first part. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. So to the point of it feeling better with a keyboard and mouse, I funny enough, I was doing some research for this game beforehand, and this was a game that Neon Giant, the folks who developed this, you know, they went to Epic and received a grant for the Ascent because they won some type of award. And that was in 2018. And then about a year or so later, they went to Xbox and they locked down an exclusivity deal. Now here we are in 2021. So, you know, this game was in development for like 3-4 years, it seems. Maybe a little bit longer than that, of course, but active development, I should say. And it looks like it did start off as a PC game working with Epic, and then they moved to Xbox with that exclusivity deal. So I would say that there is the possibility what Tom had written in about it is what maybe happened. That, you know, you can feel that. I mean, for me, I thought it controlled really well. I that was the least of my complaints with the game. Was I felt the button layout, the twin stick. I mean, it's hard to mess up a twin stick shooter, but even with how active the triggers are in the game, like that felt good. The abilities where they were on the bumpers, weapon swapping with Y. I mean, it all felt pretty good. I'm kind of surprised. Maybe it's because I just haven't experienced it on PC, so I haven't seen something others are seeing. But for me personally, I thought that it controlled quite well. And I agree with you. You were saying how like the gameplay, when it really ramps up, you can kind of get into it. Yeah, when there are certain points where really towards, this isn't super spoilery, although it may sound it at first, when you get to the end game and you start to get to these enemies that are running at you and they're a little bit squishier, right? And they send a ton your way. It's like at that moment they finally got it, because throughout the whole game they're like RPGifying it. They're level gating you in certain areas until you're a certain level. Good luck doing this. And it frustrates me to no end, right? Yeah. But then you get to the end game and they start sending like different enemies at you. They gotta be taken down different ways, and there are hordes of them. You gotta watch your environment. It's this. It comes together and you're like, this is what it should have been, right? Like if there was a little bit more loot, I was like, this would have been excellent. This is what I was expecting, like a good twin stick shooter that looked beautiful. It was really high octane action. And I just felt like as you were going through the cityscape, that's where the game struggles, funny enough, where I think it shouldn't have. And especially when you get to later game areas, they start to put up turrets and things and you're like taking cover. It's interesting because the way it's laid out is not like any other twin stick shooter. You're crouching behind cover. There's a trigger you hold or a button you press if you're on PC. You aim high. And I love this mechanic. I love this, man. Especially, twin stick shooters always feel flat. They're horizontally built. This game felt like there were levels to it. And that was really nice. Like if you're going up a stair set, in most twin stick shooters, your bullets are going up the stairs and then across. They are doing some magic. But in this game, you actually had to hold the left trigger, get to the right step, and you aim high, and they can't hit you, but you're hitting them. I mean, there is this level of tactical awareness that's required that I really did like with this game. Do you find yourself enamored with the mechanic?
Bro, you described that beautifully. That's exactly how I felt. I mean, there was a part late game where I'm going to call them silos or something, where they kind of pop up. First of all, the enemies get very aggressive than prior enemies, where they hunt you down. You got to use your evasion. You got to dodge. You got to get out the way. Right. Then you have these silos, which are basically marking the map with these missiles. So it starts to get very hectic. And to your point with the enemy variation, because there were some that were really kind of smallish and you had to shoot at a lower angle, at that standard angle. Right. Whereas there's other things, like I said, those silos where you have to aim up to really take, if you don't control them, those with the other beefier enemies really could do damage to you. And it was so much fun. I thought that aspect is what they did really well. Like, this is what I like. It has so much potential, right? And it's just like, there's certain things you like, you love it. And you're absolutely right with even though the skitty-scape stuff is really beautiful looking, that's what drags it, because like you'll have these great action set pieces, high octane, balls to the wall, let's go. Then it's like, oh, now you got to go all the way over to Albuquerque and hope that a train station is over there. And like, what? Like, oh, let me get you. Oh, I got this map. I can't stand this map, bro. This map is the worst. Like, go ahead.
Okay, dude. It was slightly vindicating when I cranked on this game for a while about its map, its navigation. I admittedly, in my preview, did not bring up the taxi, did not bring up the train, because I had not gotten that far yet. Right. That is on me. But people were pitching it to me like this is the answer you were looking for, Matty. Like, you know, people weren't really upset. They're like, he said how long he played. Like, you can only play some. But I get to it, and I'm like, this is still. I got to be honest, because like, a lot of people think, oh, you're being hard. 12 people. It was still terrible to explore. It was not intelligently laid out at all.
I agree.
And the way the map was, it just, I was constantly confused. And I get it with these types of games. It's hard to give player awareness when the camera's above you, so you can't see what's in front of you. Right. But even when you open up the world map, you started to go to different areas. Like, they may have addressed this in a patch, but one thing I had a problem with was when I was taking my taxi to certain places, I didn't have a quest marker next to where they were. And I was like, where is like, go to the gunk district. And I'm like, where's, okay, let's see here. Like, oh, I don't know where the quest. So I'd find myself guessing. I'd be like, I think it's here. And then you'd open your map and you'd see the icon. You're like, okay, it is in this area. Why didn't you just have the icon for that area? And it's such a little thing.
To like, I didn't feel, maybe it was me that I could, I felt like you couldn't make a waypoint to it, like on the map. Like, the map was not really interactable.
That's something that it really needed to, right? Like, set personal waypoints.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Because sometimes the game had a thing, if I remember correctly, that you could press and it would kind of tell you where to go.
Yeah, when you press up on the D-pad, like in game, it's great. It'll be like, hey, but then you press up and it'll be like 2,000 meters. And you're like, damn, I'm mad far from whatever. Right. Then I go to the map, and what would happen is I'm trying to rotate the map, but it was just so messy and clunky and not intuitive that I felt I could set a waypoint or even like say, okay, where is it in this district do I need to go? It just, there was still issues. It was a beautiful looking map, but it just wasn't really intuitive. But continue, you said.
Yeah, I was going to say, just even I had trouble personally. I'm glad it worked out for you. I had trouble with even the up on the D-pad. Like, I would go to certain places and it would lead me to, like, what it would do is it would say 600 meters away. I'm like, all right, perfect, sweet. Yeah. It would take me to a district, and then I'd hit up on the D-pad. I'd be like 1,400 now. And I'm like, did I go to the right spot? Because it was like saying, to get closer to your objective, you're 600 meters away to get to the area to your next objective. I'm like, what is that? Confused me to no end, because I'm like, did I fast travel to the wrong spot? I started arguing with myself a little bit. I'm like, am I fucking this game over? Did I not go to the right spot? Yep. I could never tell because the navigation was just poor. It was just not handled well at all. I agree. It seemed like the game was constantly confused with itself, where it had the tools to tell you where to go, but it just never worked out quite as well as they had envisioned.
I agree.
Yeah. All right, so speaking of navigation and level gaining, we got Alejandro Blanco writing in, hello, Dukes. I personally had a good time with the Ascent, but I'd be lying if I said I was itching to come back. First, the good. I thought that the tricks and scene shots this team was able to put out with an isometric title were fantastic. Easily my favorite part, alongside the general world building and lore that these guys injected into this product. Gunplay was also fun at times. As for the bad, just like Matty, I found that pathfinding and navigating was equally terrible alongside the overall allocation of level-gated enemies that did not reflect what was in the quest menus. Hope you guys have a Halo Infinite co-op delay kind of day. That's a good one.
That's going to be a good one for the Duke.
All right, so we talked about navigation. We got to talk level gating a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, I was told I had these problems because I was a solo player. That when I was leading into these areas, like Alejandro said, you get into a level 7 quest and suddenly I'm pulling up on level 12s and they're just gunning me down. People were saying, oh, well, if it's co-op, it's easier. You guys can work together. I'm like, all right, maybe that makes a little bit more sense. It was balanced for co-op. Did you run into these types of encounters frequently? And if so, did you find yourself, I literally had beating my head against the wall moments, which I use sparingly. Like I was literally like, dying and looking at the map and going, there's no other way around but through here. And I can't do any more quests. I'm fresh out of them. I gotta go, but I can't. Did you have this stuff in co-op?
We did. It not as much, but we did have some. Now, when we did 3 or more, shout out to my boy Kai, because he was high level. So I wanted to test the game to see if it was going to scale. Right? Because my boy was like a 20, whatever, we were 13s or whatever we were at the time. And he's out there handling stuff. So we didn't get a chance to really experience what pain is. So there was a couple of days when I was playing and my boy Kabasu wasn't there. It was just me and my boy Valakan, and we were of the same level. So we're going through and I literally experienced where I was like, this is what Matty's talking about.
Okay, so you did have it in co-op.
Yep, we get to a certain area and it's like, the game is like, yo, you're not supposed to be here. The level of the enemies are like so crazy. And I'm like, and then I even talked to my boy, I'm like, yo, he was like, yo, this part right here by myself, I'm beating my head. I could not pass. We had to wait until I got my other boy about to come back to get through certain sections. So I was like, it's not scaled correctly. Then I did hear, correct me if I'm wrong, Matty, I did hear that there's a level of randomness with each encounter as you, like if you do the same mission over or side mission or regular, like there's a bit of randomness to enemy placement and where things happen and how they come at you. So I did see a lot of that when we were dying. It's just the two of us that time. And I'm like, okay. And then sometimes we got the luck of a draw, like of an easier run and an easier set of enemies and kind of thing. Sure. And one thing I want to, I know this ain't on the subject, but I got to talk about my frustration with armor in the menus. Okay. My main thing is I was understanding the augments. I was understanding the weapon aspect. I felt good about that. But armor, I just felt it did a horrible job of explaining, you put this on, it's your cybernetics. You put this on, your motorics, right? But then you get a piece of armor and there's really no detail on what it's really affecting towards the scale. It would just have a visual icon as opposed to, I wanted like another drill down menu to say, okay, this is what cybernetics does, or this is how this armor is better than the other armor. It would just give me like arbitrary numbers. 48 is higher than this. And I'm like, okay, but what does this mean? Like I felt in the game, armor didn't do a good enough job telling me why I should value certain armor pieces over other. Is this something that you understood better? Because I was struggling a little bit.
Yeah, I think I may have understood a little bit better because there was a button. Yeah, no, there was a button I think you could press that would give you more info on what was being boosted, because the primitive HUD, if you will, on its own was not descriptive enough. And really, it's not until you get into some of the character skills that I found myself understanding it. For a while, I was just looking for the green numbers, right? That's what I thought.
Me too.
You're hunting the green numbers. You're like, all right, what can I throw on here that's going to make these go up? And that was it. And a lot of times it did devolve into that. But as I took a little bit of a deeper look, this is not, by the way, for those who are wondering, a deep RPG at all. Like it's just, and not that I personally wasn't even looking for that. Some people thought I was, which, you got to understand what the team is doing and part of the issue there was an indecisiveness. It could have been a deeper RPG, because we'll talk about loot in a little bit, but I think they come up a little short there. But I did like what they did, because like your motorics would impact your dodge speed. And so you would just be able to zip around if you were building towards that. And it wasn't like you were gonna have this deep, heavily tweaked build that was very separate from like your co-op partner. But once I did get it, I did find myself being a little more picky and choosy.
Okay.
But what happened though is maybe then you didn't run into this problem I had, which was the loot. To me, I started to realize when I got very picky with it, because I understood what I was looking for, there isn't enough.
Yeah, it's not a lot.
It's not enough, man. And by the way, shout out to them ugly helmets.
Oh, them ugly helmets.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Let's talk loot real quick, because I think that's probably the most important thing that we've been holding back here. Yes. Cody Richter writes in, "Hey, Cog and Matty, the biggest setback for the game for me was the lack in diversity of loot. I know this game isn't meant to have a Diablo-style loot system. When you only have a handful of items to get as you progress through the game, it definitely holds it back. It's gorgeous, plays great, and is a lot of fun in co-op. But without something pushing me to improve my character, I eventually lost interest and moved on to something else. I do think this sets up the developers of what they need to focus on and improve in a potential sequel or future project."
Yeah.
So the loot, what did you think of the guns and the augments and the armor? Of course, we now know. What did you think of everything that you were picking up and buying from shops? The upgrade system, of course.
No. I mean, look, a lot of it was very simplified in the sense that I was getting a lot of duplicates of the same guns. I started settling in on this thing called the Dominator. It was kind of like a long range, kind of like almost like an auto rifle, but long range. And then when I started getting the excessive weapons, I started to get cool with that. I started to figure it out, what you said, as far as where I really started to like the game was not really weapons and loot. It was more of the augments and the module stuff, because what I would do then is pair armor and stuff that would make those skills kind of refresh faster, because some of them would tell you that. But to the guns themselves, they were good. They felt good. I started to learn about like the energy weapons affecting like the robot types and stuff like that, and really having that type of so you started to value certain things. But I completely agree with Cody. There was not enough loot. Like, it was just too many duplicates. And then after a while, all I ended up doing is when I fell in love with like one weapon, I would go to the I think it's the guy with the hammer icon, whatever, and I would just literally spend money on upgrading the gun that I like. To make sure because I would check the DPS set and then like just put the DPS up on that. I'm sticking with this. And then they had the tactical one. I did the turret. The one that was really powerful is, I think it was like kind of like a healing thing where you would stand in the center.
Necessary, by the way. Almost mandatory at a certain point in the game.
Shout out to the spider bots. Shout out to the spider bots. Those are very helpful. Go do the work. Go find where the enemies are, kind of thing. But abilities, yes. Loot, kind of weak for the first entry. They needed more. And to your, point, there was some looks, I'm like, damn, that looks good. But statistically, this doesn't work for what I'm really trying to do. So I had to make tough decisions and look ugly.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, there was one time I was streaming on my server to my friends, and they were looking at my helmet. They're like, dude, take that off. Now I'm like, no, you don't get it. I need every bit of help I can get in this game. I got to look like a fool out here, because like, if I don't, I'm dead. I'm more dead than I was before. So I'm there with you, right? You're like, I gotta take the L here. And so for me, the loot, I'm on the exact same page as you. I found myself, what I like is in some games that ability to be attached to your weapon, if you can customize it more. I feel like there was room for that here, where it would have been really cool to say, take those augments or those modules and like attach them to your gun somehow to give them more personality. Because I don't mind if there's fewer guns, but when there's so few guns, there's got to be a trade-off, I feel. And this is once again where I get into the same bag I have multiple times, which is game took on too much. And it did a lot of things all right when it could have done a couple of things very well. This is one of those instances where the loot came up short and it just couldn't decide what it wanted to be. And I think it's because the game was so beautiful, you had to keep the graphical fidelity up even in your loot. And it sucks because maybe they could have pumped out more, because they had a couple of uniques. Like there was one I really liked. It was this rocket launcher that just had a slow warm up. And as it picked up, it was like boom, 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 boom. And I'm just launching missiles at everything. I'm like, this is a fun weapon. I like this.
Yeah.
I'm watching the enemy's health bar just go down. I'm like, all right, it's balanced now, baby. And so I found myself really liking when they dropped a nice unique at my feet. It didn't happen often though. And at times when I thought like, oh, that was a tough boss, certainly they've got a reward waiting for me. Nothing, like the same shotgun I picked up earlier. That's a little disappointing. And that comes to the territory of these types of games. So ultimately, when it came to the Ascent loot, very hit or miss for me. It wasn't fully sorely disappointed because I think I understand the situation they were in a little bit to give them leeway on that. And it was still fun to play. But there were times I was wishing, I could switch things out. To your point about abilities, this is where things got a little more interesting because for a while I was using just the big punch they give you in the beginning of the game that has like an arc and wipes people out. Then I find myself the Iron Man laser where you're just like,
that was just
you're just blasting it.
Yes.
That was amazing.
I love that one
because it had a really good risk reward system to it. It was like, you will eviscerate anything in your path. But if someone's coming from your back, someone coming from your side, it does not matter. You're dead, man. Like you were getting.
Oh no, you can rotate it. I found out you can rotate it.
Yeah, you can rotate it, but even if
it's tough,
if you're like fighting, if you're like trying to target a boss creature with it, right? Who's not going to go down, and he's got some hordes with him.
Yeah, you're right.
Like then you got to hope that you're just gonna wipe them all out. But to your point, you can rotate it. But I love the risk reward for that. I thought it was great. And to the modules point, I removed my dodge roll and substituted for like a teleport. So I was just zipping all over the place. I was like, all right, I'm liking how I'm feeling here.
Nice.
What I noticed though is this is where the co-op balancing I found was interesting. So we'll talk about the final battle in a little bit, but they really swarm you. And I was struggling big time with this until I switched my modules, not my weapons or anything. I switched my modules and all I did was I took out, augmentations. And what I did was I took out a augment that put another bot of some kind. It wasn't the spider bot.
Yes. Okay. Yep.
And what happened was all those enemies coming my way, half of them just went to him. And I was like, it was just like, dude, he's just a body right now. Yeah. And I thought to myself there and then in that final moment, I was like, is this the balance that I needed? And I know we already talked about the co-op balancing, but I found that interesting because I think it shows that people's experience with this game can be somewhat diverse if they find the right tools at the right times. Like maybe someone switched that earlier who was a solo player, so they were popping that thing and going, "Oh, I'm fine." Like they're distracted all the time. So it's interesting to see how things are sort of unraveled here. Now you seem to have liked it more than me based off what you said at the start of this. What was it that you liked beyond, of course, the we talked about some of the mechanics. What really synced up with you?
I think for me, it was, again, the atmosphere was so beautiful and I really started to get into the world a bit. And, let me start off by saying, like, I was first really disconnected because I really didn't feel the story as much. We're going to get into that. But what made me really didn't feel the story at first was the bad character models in the cinematics.
Okay.
In the cinematics, right? And I got to call out my people, man. I got to call out my people, man. Look, we here at the African American delegation, we feel there wasn't enough representation. Like as far as like, I'm like, yo, I can't really get deep with the face model. It was really the same face, just a different tint. And I'm just like, come on, y'all gotta give me a little bit more. I understand it's 12. I understand it's 12, y'all.
No, dude, but you're right.
For the next one, get a little more brothers and other different things in there. We good to go. But other than that, the reason why I did get into it, I did feel the game was fun with friends. I really enjoyed it. I felt the guns felt good. I felt the evasion. I felt when the music hits, it was a very adrenaline pumping vibe. I felt like when you go to, I think it was when you first go to the Ascent company and you're going up into this elevator, right? And you land there and then you see this very pristine, very nice, clean, futuristic type vibe. I told you about the deep stink when you're going into like the trash sewage area, that part. Like some of these settings, even when the terrible travel system, like, but even when you ride the train, I'm like, all right, it felt...
Yeah, there was personality there for sure.
It felt like a person... The game story didn't get me, but the environment was so rich and engrossing.
Mhm.
It made me want to play. And the music. That's what I'm forgetting. The music. I really like the music. Even from the title screen on, just sitting there. I really liked it. So the atmosphere of the game made me keep playing with the basic core mechanics. I felt the foundation is there. You know what I'm saying? It
Gotcha.
just, all the other things kept getting in the way.
Sounds like it was a better way to play with co-op, because for me, it was one of those, by the end, I was like, thank fucking God. Like, I'm sorry, but I gotta say, I was like, thank God it's over, man. This game like put me off so much. Remember when I was in that league grind? Yeah. This is what drove me there. I was like, I need a break from single player games for a little bit. I was like, I'm not gonna give anything a fair shot right now. Yeah. I just knew it in my gut. And I'm glad I finished it, but yeah, for me, I wish I could be a little bit more uplifting about it, but I was just sorely disappointed by it. Not even, my pre-launch expectations aside. It's just as I dug deeper, it wasn't like I was able to unearth anything. I just found myself consistently annoyed. As much as I had to put your
sorry to cut you.
No, you're good. You're good.
If you had to put your finger on it, because the 1 or 2 missions I did solo, I banged my head because I felt the scaling was unfair. Right? If you had to put one issue, what's the most frustrating aspect that, as a single player of the Ascent, that really said, you know what, can't do it?
I think it's got to be the less the story encounters, more the random point A to point B encounters. Because when you're going through the world, you're taking in the sights, you're picking up quests, and you're just seeing all these different cities. To me, I was like, all right, this is good. This is good enough, rather. And it's when you hit those pockets of overleveled enemies to get to that level, like you're level 10, you accept the level 7 quest. You're like, I'll get some extra money. I'll get some extra XP, maybe an item or two, it'll tell you what your rewards are in the quest menu, which I kind of hate when games do that, because it's like, I feel like, part of it's the surprise, but some people like to know what they're getting. So I respect that.
I agree with you.
But you're going on this level 7 quest as a level 10 and you pull up and there's level 15. It's like, hey, yo, what you doing here? I'm just like, I'm just pulling through, man. What are you doing here is a better question, and they kill you. And so for me, it's that moment of like, I don't know if they were trying to immerse you, but you're just pulling up and you see that level 15, you're like, oh fuck, and there's no way to avoid them. Like some of them are not immediately aggroed, right?
Yeah.
So I'll try to walk around. I'm like, dude, I'm a good guy. Like, don't do it.
Don't try to avoid the beef.
Yeah, I literally was trying to avoid it, and I would like be walking by, and they'd be like, "All right," and they shoot me anyway, and I'm like, "Oh my god, man!" So, it to the game's credit, I'll rewire this into a compliment. I did find myself in a lot of encounters going back into my inventory, going into my abilities, and looking at what I could do for situations.
Yes.
A little bit more than I would have liked, but I can get why some people would appreciate that. I understand why some people like this game, but I think from a balancing perspective, it shows how important the math is to a game. When you get your numbers right, what happens? And to me, those random encounters just piled on and continuously ruined the experience. And then, there was just, the story wasn't, to me, as engaging. I didn't feel like it took advantage of the world that they had built that was so interesting. And so I think it's a good transition point to talk about the story. So for those who have listened, we've given you 40 plus minutes now of spoiler-free discussion. We're going to get into spoilers here. We're going to talk about from top to bottom kind of what the story offered, which honestly is going to be the quickest part of our discussion, because both of us were in the spot of saying, like, I shouldn't speak for you. I was in the spot of having trouble tracking what was happening. I felt like it wasn't as focused. And by the end of it, I was like, what the fuck was that? Like, it's over. By the time it ends, you're like, I feel like there was more there. So once again, before I continue, please tab off if you don't want this game spoiled for you. 1, 2, 3. Now, Cog. Here we go.
Yo, let's get it.
Let's talk about the story for the Ascent.
Yeah. That.
Yeah.
That's where they lost me.
Okay.
You said it perfectly before. Like, the world is so beautiful. This thing should tell this amazing story. And I immediately disconnected from the very first mission. You go to dude in the bar, you're talking to him, and after he says his little dialogue, right? they have like the 4 little choices. It just felt so surface. It just felt, one sentence, he repeats it, that's it. The next sentence, what about this? Like, and it just, I didn't connect with anybody. I'm just like, yo, what's the next mission?
Right.
What's the next joint to shoot?
Yep.
Where's the green icon? Like, sidebar.
Yeah.
Speaking of icons, this is a co-op issue. Like, I forgot that. This is a huge co-op issue.
Go for it.
In the UI, in the upper right-hand corner where you have that map, I guess, telling you when you're walking around the world, right? They feel, the Ascent feels that if you change your body color, your armor color, whatever, your skins and all that, your reticle will change in the actual map. My boy had like black on or whatever. We couldn't find him anytime. I'm like, yo, bro, where are you on the map? I don't know where you at. Like, I can't find you. And he's like, oh, I'm right here. I'm right next to you. So that was a whole thing in itself when trying to do story missions and trying to find my friend. And we had to tell him to change his actual suit and armor colors to like something bright so his reticle would match on the screen and we could actually find him. That was my sidebar. I forgot to mention that was a horrible UI thing in co-op, not being able to color indicator on the map. Now back to the story. Story, yeah, man. It just, I just did not care. Like, no one was compelling to me until you got to that chick, and I forgot her name, and she's like, you're working for me now, and you're doing this. Kira. When Kira came, I got a little bit more interested. I was like, okay, now I'm like, wow, we all enslaved and work with the companies and this, that, and that part got me. And I love how her disrespect of you, like every time you sapiens, I know you guys are not that capable of, whatever. Even sometimes when you die, you hear some snarky stuff, kind of thing. But other than that, not one really outside of her, like no memorable characters, no story beats where I felt any emotional connection. The fact that your character doesn't talk also was a disconnect a little bit for me. It didn't personalize it. It just, it just was, to me, it felt the game was saying, you're here to shoot and kill. Do what we tell you and go on to the next mission. But what about you? Did you feel connected? Did you catch something? Maybe for you, you were in it. You were involved with this narrative.
Interesting, because I found myself in the spot of early on, I was like, all right, what's going on here? And when they go, the Ascent group has fallen, right? They tell you it's dissolved. It's completely disappeared. No one knows what happened. No. I was like, oh, shit. Okay. Because to me, I was sort of thinking of the Outer Worlds a little bit. So I was thinking like, this is a clearly corporately controlled world. And the Ascent group is that major corporation that's sort of holding control over everyone. I was expecting more of that type of game, but then you find out they're gone. And I'm like, all right, so this is like a corporation world on a downward spiral now because there's this power vacuum.
Yes.
And you've got people trying to vie for control. So when you get pulled into this mercenary role where this guy's like shooting his shot, just some gangster, I'm like, all right, I'm kind of like about this, It reminded me a little bit of my time with games like Champions of Norath, Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance, these isometric action RPGs where you're sort of pulled into a situation and you're just a key component to rising up in the ranks of some faction and going into a much more grand role.
Right.
And it doesn't have to mimic that, but what happened here was you rose up and then you got demoted. You rose up and then you get Y Corp pulling up with Kira. She's like, you work for me now. And just treats you like shit. And I'm just like, now I felt like I was kind of working towards something narratively. Now I feel like I'm just doing your bidding aimlessly because you want me to. And really the way to explain all this is by leaping to the ending, because between that point and the end, you're sort of doing missions for Y Corp. And eventually you start to investigate the Ascent group and try to learn, hey, what's happened to everyone? Because I guess no one thought of that in the first place. So you finally get up there, you find out they've all been shot and they're killed, right? They got eviscerated. That brings into this will narrow the focus a little bit. There's this clear villain character that shows up. She's sort of one leading the uprising, tricking the Ascent group, or the Ascenders are what they're called, who follow the Ascent group, thinking that they're this new, they're going to restore the glory, yada yada yada. So I'm thinking like, all right, we got a villain character now. Like, okay, things have gotten interesting again after like 8 hours of nothing. Sweet. And get to the end of the game.
Yeah.
You shoot her.
Yes.
She's like not even a boss. Like you shoot her twice and she's dead. And I'm like, dude, wait, what? I paused the game because I was hearing my buddies and I was like, no, certainly not. Yeah. Yeah. And so they went for it. And to me, that was one of my complaints is I don't feel like every game needs this strong antagonist, but there wasn't even an antagonistic group. And they were really leaning into, I think, like the mystery of what happened to the Ascent group. But they didn't even bring that into focus until 7-8 hours into the game.
Correct.
Where I was under the impression like they're gone. That's it. Like we are just figuring something else out now. Did you have that same feeling? Did you even tap in enough to feel that?
No, I mean, I didn't get that deep with it, but I will give you that there was a vacuum. I felt literally what you said when Kira came. I'm like, I'm just a lapdog. I'm just doing what she wants. Now, I got excited learning to, okay, what the Ascent group, what's going on? Then they like, yo, you got to get the cog to get that thing to open up. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then you find out about this other thing and you find out about the Ascenders and then she's giving the passionate speech and you know what I mean? I'm like, okay, cool. And it was just so anticlimactic to me. And I was just like, really? And then obviously that cinema, and I don't know who that dude was that was behind the desk. I'm like, I don't even know what's going on. Like, I just felt they teased something that seemed cool with corporations and control, and not all of us are basically slaves in this thing, right? And they had the ability to do something special, but it just went left, and I didn't feel any closure. You know what I'm saying? I felt like you're just teasing a sequel for something to come. Right. Like that's how I felt. But where you at?
Yeah, of course. I'm in the same boat. Yeah, we can leap right into the ending because that was once again one of the more interesting parts of the game. Like we're not exaggerating. Anyone who's played the game can tell you just the story is sort of non-existent. They try to cycle in these characters like a radio host and this hacker, and I'm like, who the fuck is this? I don't know. And what it does, it's a mistake that a lot of games make is they'll create a character for like a narrative purpose instead of having them be meaningful to the world. They're like, well, this person's a hacker and we need a hacker for this story moment. Make a hacker real quick, snap them up real quick. And they don't build them at all. And it just struggles. Kira's like the one mainstay throughout the game. And so I think it's why she could arguably considered the strongest character in the game.
Right.
Because, she's at the end of the game. She reveals that Y Corp, this new corporation you're working for, like you're under the impression that they're this takeover, right? Like they're coming in after the Ascent group. They're like, yo, we're here now. You're working for us. And like, I'm thinking to myself, like the path here is probably going to be like, we started as this gangster. We're going to start working for Y Corp. They're going to do something evil. We're out. We're going to team up with someone else and we're going to take out Y Corp.
Yes.
And you find out at the end in this weird plot twist that they were actually an emergency backup group for the Ascent group, and that the reason they didn't reveal themselves is because they didn't want like anyone to know. They didn't want the other Ascenders to know. They didn't want the company you were referring to at the end. I had to double check their name. It was Malhorst Gelb.
Yeah,
they didn't want anyone to know what they were up to. They had to like pretend to be someone else. So then to reveal themselves once the gate was destroyed, even though that Malhorst Gelb was still around, it didn't really connect to me. But I think they tried to surprise you. Like they kind of knew their story was weaker. And once you get to that point, you're like, all right, so the Ascent group is still around, is what you're telling me.
It's pretty much.
In a way it is, but they're like, oh, what I kind of liked is they stuck to their guns and they said like, oh, we'll never restore this. Like we're going to, they said they treated them like assets. They're like, we're going to repurpose the Ascenders.
Yes.
I like that. I was like, all right, cool. Like this, ending was probably the most interesting part because there was just so many WTF moments there. Let's talk a little bit about that. A sequel teaser there at the end. So you see this man who's doing his best Elusive Man impression.
Yeah, it felt like Elusive Man.
He's sitting there, same look at everything, smoking, and I'm just like, all right, dude, really? Like, try to hide it a little bit.
Yeah.
So you find out that this corporation is behind the dismantling of the Ascent group, and you start to get a picture of like, okay, there's something going on between these corporations. I wish I knew this earlier because, man, this would have been actually really cool. And unfortunately, at that point, it just ends. And you're like, all right, I guess they're doing more, which I think is good because this game could really stand to improve drastically with the sequel, with assets already made and just adding more on top. That's what it really needs. More on top in every single department.
Yes.
So that was the encouraging thing. It was okay. Hopefully Xbox gives them the money and they can make another Ascent, because I would like to see more. What did you think of that teaser at the end?
I mean, surprisingly, I wasn't as bad. I'm like, okay, I see what's going on. Like we say with Elusive Man Vibes, he talked about another benefactor, and I'm like, okay. He's like, he's got the little lackey. Okay, yes, sir. We'll get on that kind of thing. So
with our projections, sir. Like, okay,
yeah, exactly. I was like, all right, I know what this is. You know what I'm saying? And my overall thought was, look, whether it was a PC title or whatever, Xbox saw this, they saw potential in this. And I agree. I think this was a good get. I think this was a good get for them. And I think that the foundation is there. This is something that I've always complained about with Xbox in the past, which is, sometimes I feel Sony gets an IP and they don't necessarily knock it out the park on the first go, right? But they stick with it and afford it a sequel. Right. And then in the sequels, when it really takes off, and now this is a pillar franchise or whatever. And I think Ascent could be that for them. Now, I think they got to really reinvest in the story. We talked about the gameplay mechanics. Again, if you really look at it, it's not a lot they got to do. If we really break it down, they got the foundation.
Yep.
Now they just got to really refine. You know what I'm saying? And give us more and get more in depth with the loot, get more in depth with these little issues that we have. And I feel narratively they need a budget. They need a budget narratively, you know what I'm saying, to really get you in growth. But I will say this, I am excited for a sequel. You know
I am too. Yeah.
I'm extremely, and I ain't going to lie. I got to thank my boy Matty. I am not Duke twin stick shooter. And shout out to the comment boys that always kill me like, I can't believe you said. Look, I feel y'all, but I have to admit, Ascent did get me as far as playing it and having fun with it. So I will be there. If there's an Ascent 2, I'm there. Thank you, Matty, for putting me through the torture. And then now ended up liking the genre.
You gotta play some bad to enjoy the good, right?
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So I'm like, I'm there for this one to grow up and mature, because I do think there is a lot here. But to your point, story-wise, sequel, future, where you at?
Yeah, I think they should definitely go for a sequel. I think it should be a no-brainer for Xbox. I know it's money that may be sunk, but I really think this is a series that has a lot of potential to grow into something that's pretty defining for Xbox. I think it looked the part of a AAA game in a way, and they were selling it for $30.
Yeah.
I'm like, yo, what if you made this next Ascent into a full-fledged AAA $60 title? I know it sounds crazy, right? But like, I was just thinking to myself, this is a team that maybe they had a little more staff, a little bit more budget, and they weren't spread as thin. I think they could have made something really special here. Unfortunately, it came up short, but I want to see more. I did not dislike it so much. I did not want to see anything from them. It was just the key word here, and I think we got it across fine, but the key word I want to emphasize for those who stuck through it all is frustration. It's like, I was annoyed because you could see what needed to be fixed. Like, that's the thing, is sometimes when a game has a problem, it's actually not as clearly spelt out as reviewers sometimes make it out to be. There's like layers to it. This is a situation where you know exactly what's happening and why it's frustrating you, what needs to be done, more importantly, to make that less frustrating. Yes. And obviously some of that's easily more said than done, but I think that they need to make a sequel for this, especially with that teaser at the end. They left it wide open. Make a recap video for like 3 minutes for because they got to know, like, all right, we didn't really make much of a story in the first one. Make a recap video and actually make your story in the second game. That's what you got to do, because what was there was not enough in the terms of narrative. And for me personally, if they just took that same system they had, like, let's build on the loot, let's make more loot, let's build on our upgrades, that type of stuff, I think if they took it an extra step forward, could be exactly the shot in the arm the game clearly needed.
I think the potential for something special is really there, and I
Mhm.
agree with all the points. My question to you is, do we know how well they're doing? How well it did? I mean, I know Xbox kind of dodgy sometimes with numbers, and we
Yeah,
know Game Pass.
it's
So I'm
tough to tell.
curious.
It's
Yeah, I'm
tough to
curious
tell
how it did.
because you had something like Death's Door, which came out and in its week, they're like, "Hey, we got 100,000 players." I'm like, "Holy smokes, man!" But the
Yeah.
Ascent, I haven't seen anything quite like that, and it was a day one Game Pass drop, which
Mm-hmm.
puts it in a funny position of what's its player count versus its sales.
Right.
That's the other thing is some people I think were a little forgiving of this title because they, oh, it's Game Pass game.
Right.
I don't know. I mean,
No, I'm with. See, that's what I'm on that. Yeah, I'm on that boat right there that you just said. See how your face did? Like that's where I'm at. Like I'm not into this. Oh, because it's Game Pass and we could deal with a glitch.
still got paid for it.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like we still have to keep the bar of quality high and stuff like that. Not saying that this was not. I'm just saying issues though. There were some issues.
It's been tough too. I think Game Pass in a way is it's good people are more understanding, but not to spin this off course, but just real quick, I think it's worth mentioning. It's like something like Halo. Some people have really used Game Pass as the defense point. I'm like, this is not, we don't want feature incomplete. We don't want buggy rush in the name of the Ascent. So I think it's very important that we continue to emphasize like, hey, yeah, we can understand. I try to say that in my videos. I'm like, we can understand and still be frustrated. Like I know why these things are happening and how they're handling it. It is still annoying though. So something with the Ascent is I think that they need to go for it. I hope they do. I could see this building into something that's really a key piece of their puzzle. Because it's more to that diversity that we talk about with their library. Like you can find a lot of things in there, and this happens to be a good twin stick shooter action RPG. And so I just hope that they don't waste the wonderful world they've built. Even if they threw you back in the same world space and they opened it up more.
Yeah.
You got rid of those stupid fucking elevators. like they take you to the deep stink or the Ascent area. Just they got rid of those where you could actually fast travel to those different levels. Stuff like that. Just it's a game that needs quality of life enhancements. Now, my wrap-up question to you is like, what if they did an expansion or a DLC? Would that be enough for you, or would you want a true sequel?
I want a true sequel, but I ain't gonna lie. If they do make an expansion, I'm there. I'm there, bro. Okay. I am a fan. I'm a fan. I think the foundation is there, and it's fun enough to get going. And we want ultimately. Look, I'm for both. I want the extended support of this, so that this doesn't die, and they still keep a base, and people still playing it. And I don't know how many 4-player twin stick shooters are really out there.
Yeah, there hasn't been much lately. That's for sure.
It's a very unique lane, and I think like it's something that should be cultivated, should be fostered. Like you said, the diversity of the different game genres, right? This is something that's really, there's not an abundance of these out. And I want that. If they do like an extended story beat, I'm in. They do a DLC, whatever, extra levels, I'm in. And hopefully, you know what I mean? We get a full sequel with AAA budget, because if this team had a AAA budget, I think this is special, man. Yeah, I think it really could be.
Yeah, even AA, right? Like that's how I view it. Like even AA, just pull them out of the indie scene a little bit, and I think because they clearly were shooting for something more, and I think in the terms of quality, quality as in like visual fidelity and gameplay mechanics, I feel like they got it down. They just need more room to grow. So hopefully they get the money to do so.
Agreed.
We'll see in due time, but that is our review discussion and Spoilercast for the Ascent. We appreciate those of you who listened this deep. Thank you so much. And once again, just a reminder, we'll be doing these for more games down the line, so keep it locked in here. Even if this wasn't a game that you were crazy about or you think it's going to be a one-time thing, it will not be. We'll be doing this for multiple releases, both Game Pass and Xbox exclusives. Cog, any final thoughts, or shall we wrap this up?
No, man, this is great. Love these deep dives. Love the Spoilercast. I'm excited to do more of these, really get in depth with these type of games. There's going to be more coming, more, exclusives that we could actually do more of these with. So I'm excited. Yeah, man. So I'm glad. This is what I was like, you know what? I was a little mad coming in. I was like, all right. I was like, you know what? This is fun. This is cool. We got the deep dive with it. So shout out to you, Matty. This was fun.
Awesome. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for taking the time to play it, by the way. I know it was a sacrifice of time.
Yes.
And we
Destiny's coming.
Yeah, right. Destiny's coming. Now I can't ask you to do anything. Wash your hands of it. You're done.
Which queen?
But other than that, ladies and gentlemen, we hope you all enjoyed, and we'll catch you next time for episode 31 of Defining Duke Ultimate. Until then, take good care of yourselves. Peace out.
Peace.
Defining Duke, an Xbox podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand LLC, and is recorded from the United States of America. The show is conceived by Matthew Mr. Matty Plays Schroeder and me, Colin Moriarty, and is written and produced by Matthew Schroeder. Matty's co-host is Barry Lord Cognito Eversley. Defining Duke's executive producer is Dustin Furman, and the show is edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand Media's shows, including Defining Duke, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer support level on Patreon, and we're thankful for your kindness and generosity.